promise to you. So enough about us. The F word that will change your life. Learn to fail faster and succeed sooner. With Dr. Cheryl Lentz. I'm now going to actually turn things over to Mark James, who will be our moderator tonight. So Mark, I'm going to hand things off to you so that you can properly introduce Cheryl.
Mike, thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I don't know about the rest of you, but there are plenty of times in life I wish I would have learned to fail faster so I could succeed sooner. So I'm very much looking forward to what our speaker is going to be talking about. She's known as an academic entrepreneur, which means that Dr. Cheryl Lentz has a unique and dynamic speaking style that knows how to connect with her audience, because she has one foot in academia and one foot in the business and entrepreneurial space. And her goal with everything she does, as well as this presentation tonight, is to offer some pearls of wisdom so we can all use something in our personal and professional lives, which is in keeping with our mission and vision as an organization. But it's important to understand it's not enough to know things, but also need to take action. And I think she's going to talk about that as well. She's globally known for her writings on leadership and failure, and she's been published more than 44 times and has won 25 writing awards. She's an accomplished university professor, a speaker, and a consultant. She's internationally known, as well as been quoted several times in the media with stations like ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. So with that, I'd like to formally introduce Dr. Cheryl Lentz and ask her to tell us all about how to succeed from failure.
Thank you, Mark. It is such a pleasure to be here. Just so you know, I am also an alum, class of '89, proud member of class of '89. I've done a little bit of traveling around the world, but I'll tell you, my heart and soul always belongs to U of I, so I'm thrilled to be here. But here's the interesting irony about tonight, is where my failure started was actually at the University of Illinois. So I find it interesting that we're going to come full circle tonight, and hopefully you'll get a little bit closer about where your failures may lie and where the gifts may lie in them. Because here's what actually happened and why this F word is so important. Failure is not something that people teach. They don't teach it in academia. They certainly don't teach it in corporate America. I have done my due diligence with a lot of my bosses because I am a former military wife. I have moved over 38 times. And I scare the heck out of people when I talk about that F word. And it's obviously not the one you're thinking of. But the idea of failure is 4 letters for a reason. But here's the idea that changes things. My relationship with failure started really actually in high school. As I'm one of those annoying people. I was salutatorian in junior high, and I was on my way to hit valedictorian status in my senior year, and then something really traumatic happened. Is I started my first calculus BC class and earned my first C. And I can still, to this day, more than 30 years later, have the ability to tell you what that trauma feels like. And this is the whole heart and soul of why we're so afraid of failure. Something has happened to us in our past that we remember what it feels like. Because not only did I get my first C, but I earned my first F, and it wasn't fantastic. And I had to learn what failure meant and what it was doing. It's the first time in my life I'd ever hit a wall of something I couldn't do. And so I had to go after school. I had to work with my professor. I had to do all kinds of things to be able to work a little harder. But little did I know that that was going to be my first acquaintance with failure, because here's what's happened. I got so intense and so wrapped around the axle. I was hanging on so tight that the ulcers came, the nightmares came, and no one helped me process failure. Because having received only A's throughout my entire life, when you go to the refrigerator, remember that rite of passage, your first handprint, your first A that goes up there? None of that happened for me. My first C went on the refrigerator, my first F. And every morning I saw that thing mocking me. And here's what my parents were trying to teach me. They wanted to know that you had to learn how to fail, but nobody teaches you how. So fast forward to the University of Illinois, and here's the big ones. I am a big, go big or go home, and my epic failures happened at the University of Illinois. I'm sorry to say that my first semester didn't. I spent a lot of time in high school at the University of Illinois and thought I'd check out someplace else. So what I did, knowing I'd made a mistake early, is I transferred mid-year to the January to the University of Illinois School of Music. I was actually a performance major. I was an organist. I was the only undergraduate in the graduate program and spent a lot of time in Smith Hall. But here is where it gets a little dicey. Sophomore year comes along and something really unexpected happens. See, I have to explain a little bit. For those of you, if you might be music majors in the audience, music is not something we do. Music is who we are. It goes down to the depth of our soul. And so this is something I've been playing since I was 5 years old. The unthinkable happened when Dr. Gerald Hamilton, my professor, came into my practice room sophomore year and said, find another line of work, and essentially dismissed me from the program instantly. There was no jury, there was no appeal. There was what I call the day the music died. I still struggle with it because it was something that I didn't have a warning. There was no plan B. I can still hear the click at the door as Dr. Hamilton left the building, so to speak. And it was so monotone and was so matter of fact that it was just over in an instant. And this is the failure that has lasted in my life for more than 30 years. Yes, 30, since I was a sophomore at the University of Illinois. And this was something that was not something that I expected. I had a dream. I was training to be an organist at Notre Dame at the Holy Name Cathedral downtown Chicago to be a global organist. And I was found that I wasn't good enough. And here's the secret with failure. Many of us, what you hear in that moment is, I am not good enough. I suck. I couldn't do it. And the challenge is I had to learn to separate myself from me, the person, lovely, amazing. You'll fall in love with me. Everybody does. But the skill, and here's the problem sometimes we come up with, is just because I want to fly doesn't mean I'm going to sprout wings. Just because I played music since I was 5 years old did not make me Mozart. And while, rest his soul, Dr. Hamilton didn't have the best bedside manner to help me process this, he was very matter of fact and walked out the door. And I was left to be the only one in the undergraduate program who had been dismissed as well. Now all of my friends are moving on, and suddenly I'm sitting there going, what the heck just happened here? And here's where we internalize that failure. We feel the pain, and it stops us, because that's what it did for me, and what it most does for all people is, unless you're a fighter or a police officer, someone who actually makes a career of going into failure, into burning buildings, into things that are crisis, most of us run away. And that's what I did. My whole point for that was I had to find a new line of work. I called my counselor, I called my parents, I was humiliated, I was embarrassed. I found a new way. I transferred into the College of LAS, thank you so much for taking me, so that I could save my career and still graduate in the 4 years as intended. But here's what was amazing. It was a gift that I never recognized. Yes, to this day, that man I owe my career to. But I can tell you at the time, wasn't exactly grace and poise and elegance. It was really a petulant, spoiled brat who decided that if the School of Music didn't want me, I didn't want them. And I closed the door, and I never played again for 30 years. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The universe sends us all kinds of messages all the time of being able to how to deal with all kinds of things that didn't go right. Call it what you will. We failed, it didn't work, we had to find a new way, and it's very similar to what we're going with COVID right now. It's called forced compliance. Dr. Hamilton stood in my way between me and my dreams and decided, sorry, you're not good enough, and turned and closed the door. But what he did for me is what I want to do for you, is to help process the fact that that failure, that epic failure that nearly destroyed me my sophomore year, was the greatest gift he ever gave me. And I, years later, tried to go back and find him, and I'm sorry to say that he has passed on, and wherever he is, I hope he knows that he did such a kindness to me, because I would not have had the amazing career I've had since then had he not forced me to shift, which is exactly what we're doing right now. But I didn't recognize it back then. I put it in a box, I put it in the back of the closet, I ran like hell, and that was it. I never played again. And that's a shame, because had someone, and this is what I do for my students, been a college prof more than 20 years now. I have 74 doc graduates, and sometimes we have to have those difficult conversations like Dr. Hamilton had with me. I'd like to think I do it with a little bit more finesse and grace and a little bit more processing, but the outcome is still the same. Is some of us, no matter what we want to do, we're not going to be good enough in those areas. Even when Malcolm Gladwell tells us it takes 10,000 hours and anything's easy once you know how. but sometimes we're not good enough. And just because you have the skills doesn't make you Mozart and make music. So here's what I did is I walked away and had an amazing career at the University of Illinois, believe it or not. My junior and senior year were epic. Okay, I became a sorority girl. I was a fraternity girl, little sister, and had all kinds of things that were terrific happen to me. But they only happened because I was forced to find a different way forward. And that different way forward set me up for an amazing career. So the question is how do you process failure? Because what we are is, failure isn't who we are. Failure isn't the destination. Failure isn't the outcome. Failure is simply the process of learning. And here's what a lot of people used to tell me. Oh, Cheryl, it wasn't meant to be. Oh, just let it go and move on. And I'm sure you hear that in a lot of things as well. But they didn't teach me how. And that's what I can help teach you here today. Because the idea is we're overwhelmed. I had a confidence problem for a long time because I now doubted inside. But this is where we're going to do a little bit of Wizard of Oz here. Because when we talk about dear old Dorothy, and here's the secret to failure, you got to fail faster and succeed sooner. Because once you know how, it's just a process of learning and be able to protect yourself. And to look at Dorothy, she always had all the answers. So did I. But the challenge is I was looking out to the world to find those answers. And here's part of the secret. To go faster, we have to slow down. To go externally to find the answers, we got to go inside. Because I spend too much time up here, the intellectual, the professor, the Dr. C is what my students call me. But when I started to go into my heart, and I started to be able to look at what failure was teaching me, here are the doors that it opened. It's a very interesting story that when I've been on the road for a long time. I've just been home. I've been gone about 25 years. I've only been home the last 3. When I was looking for homes, each one of the homes I was looking for had a baby grand piano in it. The home I actually bought eventually had 2 pianos, a baby grand upstairs and a upright downstairs. Neither one of them stayed. Messages from the universe. Last November, I was interviewed. What an honor to interview, to give a home to a baby grand piano. And it came home with me. I call her Sarah. But here's the interesting thing. It happened in November. I sat in front of that piano the very first day it walked into my life. And it was a very interesting day because that was the first time in 30 years I touched the keyboards. And I couldn't do it right away because I sat. Oh, I still get misty about it. I sat at the keyboard with my hands poised. And it was too painful. It was hard to live through all of those memories because here's the thing is there are no shortcuts. You have to own it. You have to be accountable to it. You have to look at it. And I didn't. As a 20-year-old, I ran away from it and put it away next to the box in my closet. And only when I dared open that box and invite music as the messenger once again to come into my life did things in my life change. And it was amazing that months would pass and I would play it. I have a Siberian Husky behind me. I don't know if you could see her. But she would not only leave the room, she'd leave the house because playing the organ is very different from playing the piano. But it's still the ability to try and process, and it's a different texture and a different dexterity, etc. But I started to play again, and amazing things in my life happened. I have had more shifts in my career. I've had more speaking opportunities all over the world because I now understood the secret. Those chains around my heart that kept me in that failure for 30 years started to melt. And here are some other things that happened as well. Once we know the secret and to move from here to here, we understand that the failure has no power over us anymore. It gives us the ability to break that cycle and finally heal. Because here are the things that you don't know about me. Is more than 5 years ago, I was in a wheelchair for 9 months. Why? When you don't live your purpose, when you don't go through life and be able to do what you were always meant to do, the body remembers. The body remembered that failure. I also had another failure in college as well, as I lost the love of my life. And it was traumatic as well. And I put that box right next to the day the music died. And those kinds of things are what a lot of us do, is because failure is not something we want to look at the eye. We don't want to be able to process it. We don't want to deal with the pain. Remember that first C and that first F on the refrigerator? That's when failure started with me. But it's very interesting that now I look at failure as the same way a toddler might, same way that Edison might, is a systematic understanding of failure is just a process. And let me explain. And for those of you who have children, this is amazing. Find a toddler who's learning to walk. And I wish I could have a magic wand and just turn all of you, poof, instantly into toddlers. Why? They get it. It's we adults who forgot it. And what I mean by that is toddlers find the idea of learning fascinating. They make it a game. They get up, they fall down, they giggle. They get up, they fall down, they giggle. Rinse, repeat. Because they're not interested in walking as much as we might like to think. Walking is a means to an end. They want that cookie that mom has. They want that toy that grandma has. And they realize that walking's going to get them across the floor faster. But they don't let them stress themselves out in there. They just do it as long as it takes. Edison was the same way. I do an exercise with my students. Take Edison out to lunch and find out what might he say regarding the process. He did all these lights that are around us. You know, the legend goes that it took him 997 ways how not to build a light bulb. Only one was needed to work. So I imagine, you know, old Edison sitting there with his pencil going, yep, one didn't work, 20 didn't work, 712 didn't work, 815 didn't work. But he just kept going because it was no big deal. And so the challenge became of how are you going to look at your process of failure? What did I do the first time? The first time when the going got rough, I ran away. And for 30 years, didn't touch a keyboard. And that was my sanctuary. That was my first love, was music. And I just couldn't handle it because I didn't understand the gift it was giving me. I could have stayed in music, could have stayed in the business of music, could have done all kinds of things. Except what did I do? Is what most of us do. We close our hearts, we run away because it's too painful to deal with. But we have to understand that we can look at the perspective that we have and to try and change it, because life doesn't happen to us. Life happens for us. And the universe is going to keep giving you lesson over lesson like Groundhog Day. And I just went to Woodstock not too long ago. And it was amazing to look at what is the process that you can do with failure. So I want you to be able to look at it, quit looking outside, look inside, slow down, stare that failure down. There are no shortcuts. Matter of fact, my next book coming up is a line from Napoleon Hill. Failure has no alibi. That means if you want to own it, you want to fix it, now's the time to do that. You can be magical because guess what? Just like Dorothy, you've always had all the answers, just like I did. I just didn't want to listen. Every time the messenger came, I shut it down, turned it off, and ran away. And so now I'm being able to merge the wonderful career that I was set on and now put it back into the purpose that was always meant to be. And that failure is what offered that gift, because it no longer has power over me. And it has the ability to say, all right, it didn't work. We'll try something else, just like that toddler. Get up one more time, then you get knocked down. But most of the time, we can't process that failure. Just like COVID, a lot of people don't want to reinvent themselves. They're being paralyzed by failure, much like I was. So we have to remember to just shift. Now, again, my professor made me. I didn't have a choice. Many of things have happened to us because of COVID with that same forced compliance. But if we can separate ourselves, the person, from the skill, and realize failure's not us, failure's not that outcome, failure's not the destination, it's just a muscle, it's just a process. And it's about seeing it as an opportunity. And that's not something a lot of people can see. Another Napoleon Hill quote, as a man seeth, so he is. If you think you're going to fail, you're going to fail. If you think you're going to succeed, you're going to succeed. Either way, you're right. Because we always think that the glass is either half full or the glass is half empty. Can I give you a secret? Fill the glass. This is so incredible, the power that we have to fix, to have a do-over. You get to do it again. And we don't have to pick just one. This is the wonderful thing about being a military wife. I moved 38 times. I've had all kinds of careers. I've had all kinds of things that at one point was a hardship, because it took me a little while to get with the program. Now, every few years, I don't get to pick just one career. I've had many of them, and they've been wonderful experiences. And now I'm merging them all together, having the ability to now speak all over the world on something that I failed in college. Who knew it was a thing, right? But I want to be able to give you some things. And this is one of my students who just did this in class, and I had to write this down. She posted this in class. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is courage to continue that counts. No other than Winston Churchill himself. So the question really comes down to, what are you going to do? There's no shortcuts, and you've got to take the action. You've got to be like inviting that grand piano back into my life and actually sitting in front of the keyboard and letting that pain just wash over me and letting it just figure out what letting go is. Letting go means stop thinking here, stop blaming yourself, learn to love yourself and forgive yourself. I was 20. I had no idea what I was doing back then about music, about love, about a lot of things. I wish I could go back to my younger self and tell her what I know now and all the advice that I would give her. But I now see it as an opportunity, and my hope is to live life with purpose and poise as I'm going to go through all of the failures that have since come and will come in the future. I'm not done with failure, but the fact is now it's an old friend. I look at failure as like, something that didn't go right. What's coming around the corner? What are the gifts that it's going to give me? What are the actions? Because failure is only permanent if you let it stop you. So here's what used to scare my bosses all the time. It was hysterical. The fail faster, succeed sooner. I want to have my people, when I'm onboarding them, do every mistake in the book in the first 2 weeks. Get it out of your system. Learn how every way not to build a light bulb, because you only need that one to work. And so I would get them through that, and they're like, well, it's not a big deal. Of course not. It's just a process. 1, 2, 3, 12, 997, like our friend Edison. Here's even the baseball example. If you realize with baseball, more football in there, but just for baseball, that what do they have, a batting average of 500? That means you actually fail every other time you're at the plate. And we applaud that. It's just a matter of, you know, that you're not going to hit a home run or a grand slam every time you come to bat, but you keep showing up. Success is where opportunity and preparedness meet. You keep doing your homework, you keep sharpening that saw, you keep really working out to be able to make sure that when opportunity knocks, and it does, and that's where COVID comes in. There are so many opportunities that many people are taking that others are not. Why? We've done this before. It's not our first rodeo. Part of my first 7 years of teaching, I was a history professor. I understand that this is a cycle. We have been here before, from the Spanish-American flu to all kinds of other SARS and HIV and all kinds of other things. This too shall pass. The question is, will you be prepared when it does? So let's think about some of these things. Learning's just a game. Can I turn you back into that toddler? Can you find something that you can just finally say, yep, I'm Cheryl, I failed. And trust me, I have failed more than you could possibly think, from my health, from my career, many careers. Go big or go home. But guess what? I'm still standing, and I'm still smiling, and I've got such an I love me wall behind me. It's actually incredible that I either failed in spite of myself or despite myself. But here's the secret. I kept showing up. And this is called perseverance, is getting up one more time. And Nat King Cole fans, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you start all over again. But there's one little word I want to teach you, and we'll start winding down so I can take your questions here. But this is the idea of, what is yet? The word yet is so simple. 3 letters, not even one of the 4-letter words, just 3. And it gives you the ability going, I can try again tomorrow. I can get up and one more time and keep showing up even when things aren't quite what I expect. Because we've had a lot of things. Matter of fact, we've got a big book launch tomorrow. I own a publishing company. I only actually own 2 companies. We had a big thing, and we've had nothing but problems since Monday. And guess what? The public will not know anything about it, because everything's on track. Everything we have fixed. It's ready to go. Come 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, the book's going to launch. It's going to be wonderful, because we know how to do this, but we also know what to expect. And we expect that it's not going to go well all the time. But this is where grace comes in. What happens in that moment when you're failing? That's when character shows up. It's easy when things go right. It's not so easy when it doesn't. And this is where leadership, and that's where my PhD work is in. It's in leadership. Is the ability is, how do we lead ourselves? We lead ourselves for logic. We lead ourselves in our heart. And I will guarantee you, your body knows and your heart knows everything that you need to know. You just have to trust yourself, and you have to forgive yourself when you get it wrong. And know that, you know what? We're just going to live to fight another day. And so what can I do to be able to inspire you that I've had some major failures. I mean, I almost didn't finish college. I was forced to change careers. I've almost died 3 times and I'm still here. Why? Because I'm just too darn stubborn to do any other way. And I am going to live life to its fullest. Because when the game is over, I'm not going to have any regrets. Because when you regret not what you do, you regret what you didn't do. And right now, my biggest fear is not COVID. My biggest fear is not learning how to work within COVID. You can work with Mother Nature. You can work with failure. You just got to work that muscle. And you got to deal with the emotionality again, because most of us, we don't like to fail. It's painful. I can tell you, 30 years, I'm probably the longest failure you're ever going to hear. I'm going to tell these stories around dinner time for folks, but this is how I learned, is to finally deal with it. And now, the first ones were tough, but the rest of them have been a whole lot easier. But it's still a matter of showing up. So I want to be able to wish you the ability to stand your ground, own your power, be accountable, celebrate failure, be the Edison, be the toddler, be the, yeah, if it didn't work, so what? We'll try again tomorrow. Failure is only failure if it stops you permanently. Remember Winston Churchill, it's the courage to keep showing up. And that's what you need to keep doing, because I keep showing up. And U of I, most people can't understand why I absolutely adore our school so much. And the Quad is my best place anywhere in the world. And that's why, even though it's the grounds of where my first failures that have really defined who I am. And I'm thrilled to tell you that lots of wonderful things have happened in my career since I have really learned to understand and make friends with failure. So instead of looking at the Apollo 13, failure is not an option, I think failure is the only option. So I want to be able to help you process failure in such a way that you're going to get there faster. Because you won't take 30 years. You're just going to say, yeah, baseball. Yeah, we're going to get there faster. Every time you get up to plate, get it out of your system and then learn. But you've got to take the emotionality of it. You got to be accountable. You got to own it. It's not going to always be easy. But once you get on the other side of it, you look at it's the greatest gift you will ever have. So Dr. Hamilton, wherever you are, my friend, thank you for giving me the greatest gift anyone ever has. And I have finally, as your faithful student, learned how to use it. So my name is Dr. Cheryl Lentz. I'm thrilled to be here this evening as the spotlight for an alumni who finally got it right. Just do things a little bit faster than I did, would you? And this is what I help with people. I coach them through failure, and I do a lot of speaking to be able to look at some of the options that you have, particularly now in COVID. Reinvention's not a bad thing. Empowerment's not a bad thing. There's opportunities all around us. Let me do what I do for my students, is help you see what's already there, because there's an amazing world out there. If we can just adjust your focus a little bit, get that toddler magic wand going and start giggling your way to success, because failure is not that 4-letter word. It can be a powerful gift to change your life. So thank you so very much for letting me come and join your world for tonight. And if there's anything that I can help you with, please let me try. I've had an amazing journey with failure, and I'm really thrilled about it. So thank you so much, Dee, and thank you so much, Mark, for having me, and for Michael. So let's get this party started. What can I help you with? Let's have some questions.
Dr. Cheryl,
Sure.
thank you very much. Yeah, a great presentation. Anyone who didn't take something away from this wasn't listening. That's all I'm saying.
And some of you I did a lot of teaching for me, and I had to take it the rest of the way, but now I think.
Well, that's right. Dee, we have a couple of superb questions that came in. Do you want to do one and I'll do one, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, that's great. I'll take the first one.
Okay.
And it's a comment with a question, Dr. Lentz. So this attendee has said, I am super motivated and disciplined when it comes to work and my home, husband, kids. But when it comes to losing weight, I've been failing for 20 years. I've started over hundreds of times, forgiven myself, remotivated myself, and I keep failing. Why? How can I stop this cycle?
Oh, I think that's fantastic. This is the part where you're getting stuck really up here and looking at all of the, because failure can be that hamster wheel we're on. The more that we try, the more that doesn't work, but you're on maybe 712 of Edison instead of getting to that light bulb. You've got to have the ability to keep showing up in there. There's an answer out there. I've been to the Mayo Clinic 3 times and they're still working on some of this stuff, but part of it in there is maybe not to put so much pressure on there. I learned a lot by going inward. By going inward in that letting go process, it's meditation. I get up every morning and I quiet all of those voices around me because my head's the one that speaks the loudest. When you close down your head, you can start hearing your heart speak. Remember, Dorothy had all the answers, and I believe you have them too. It's a question of, can we find it to listen? Because I confused the Mayo Clinic as well, and I think that may be issues that you're dealing with as well, is that nobody could find out what was wrong, and yet I was in a wheelchair. And part of that was because there was something that I really wanted, something that I wasn't living my life purpose. For me, it was music. So my question is maybe you and I should chat in there, but I think there's something deeper in your heart that you already know, that all of this other stuff isn't necessary because you've already got the answer. We just have to help you find it, because it's more powerful than any diet program, more powerful than any medical stuff in there, because it's you. And when you can be able to give your permission to say, well, what if I want to change careers? What if I'm not happy doing something? And what if I can't admit it because people will judge you? I went through that. Remember, all of my friends were, and they're brilliant band directors, and they've had illustrious careers for 20 and 25 years. I was the only one that was dismissed from the program. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell them, because what are they going to think? I think the only ones that were thrilled were my father, because he never wanted me to be a music major to begin with. But part of where that anger came from is because of what I wanted to do and how I had to be forced to pivot. Well, sure I did, and I've had a great career outside of that. But when I came back to center, and now I have music on my terms, I think there's something that you may be missing inside that you really want, that you may not want to admit to yet because you're afraid what the rest of us are going to think. Trust me, coming on here and doing a lot of speaking all over the world now, it's vulnerable. It's difficult to sit up here and put your heart out there and have people go, you know what, she may be full of hooky. We may not like her. We may absolutely have the first time you've heard a speaker that connects with you. I have my first TED Talk coming up in October 10th, and I'm so excited. I've been telling Mark about this for months now. And it is vulnerable, because of what I'm going to have to do is put myself out there and to risk. And that's what you're thinking of right now, is risking who you are to be able to get something better. And I think we need to dig deeper to find it, like I do. It could be a little painful, but I think the payoff's worth it. So we'll make sure you get my contact information, and you and I can talk further. Maybe I can help.
Great.
Thank you.
Great response. We have another comment/question here to Dr. Lentz. You're being asked early in your college career to, quote, find a new major/career was obviously very impactful. If there is another failure in your life career that had a long-lasting, is there another failure in your life or career that had a long-lasting emotional impact the same way? Or is it something that occurs just when we are much younger? Great question.
I think failure can happen any way when you aren't given God gives us the tools way before he gives us the maturity to understand how to wield those tools. And the second epic failure was I lost the love of my life in college. And it was something that I wasn't strong enough. I didn't understand love. This is why I hadn't dated a whole lot. And you never expect to meet the love of your life at that young age. And it was something that I don't know if I'm going to get a do-over for that. But we have to be able to, a friend of mine gave me some great advice once. We do the best we can with what we knew at the time. What I knew at the time was incomplete, was not exactly the best way to handle it. But I think the easiest way to do this is to find a mentor. Because here's how I've been successful in business. I've been in business for 14 years. I found someone who's done what I've done, and I hired them to teach me, much the same way that I'm a doctoral mentor. I'm not above or below anyone. I'm just ahead of them in the process, particularly with failure, because I've done it so darn much. I'm really good at it. But part of this is, how do you know way back in the beginning? Like, I often wondered if I would have had that counselor, that female mentor, musical mentor, anyone that I have become a mentor for my students, had there been one for me back then, might it have only taken me a year or two, maybe a few months to process this? I don't know, because I didn't know about love. I didn't know about music. I was the only one that had been dismissed ever. There wasn't anyone who could relate to me. And I think experiences is you have to look at ahead of somebody who says, yes, I'm going to follow in their footsteps, because it's so much easier than blazing a trail. But it was no mentors for me. They simply, the advisors say, well, if you want to graduate in 4 years, the music history program is for you with liberal arts and sciences, and we'll get you and you'll get your degree and you'll still have your 4 years. And I didn't have much financial aid beyond that. So it was practical, but it wasn't heart focused. And so I look back at some of that. I didn't process it. I put it away. So I think what we need to do is, regardless if it happened when I was 2 or whether it's going to happen and there's going to be stuff going forward, because now I know the science. What do I do when big failures happen? And trust me, they have. I'm an anomaly when it comes to a female being in business. 50% of businesses fail in the first 3 to 5 years, and that's just normal folks. I'm a minority as a female on top of it, and those statistics are even higher. 14 years later, I'm still here, and I have a second business, and I'm thinking about doing a third. And so why? Too stubborn, maybe? No, I don't think that's it. I think I understand now, is I have hired coaches, very expensive coaches sometimes, who have done what I've done. And now I know what it looks like. And I had someone today who called me out of the blue because we had some horrible weather. I'm sure you guys experienced yesterday. And let me tell you, it was like the hand of God that came down. And I was hunkered down in my basement for 3 hours wondering, going, oh my God, is this it? And she called and she said, I understand what you're going through because I have been there. Those, I think, are the most amazing words you will ever hear, because it's the comfort of someone who's been there and someone who solved it. So don't reinvent the wheel. Figure out someone who's done what you've done, the problems you've had. Just like parents, just like business owners, don't try and blaze your own trail. That's where I've been able to fail faster and succeed sooner, because I've got all the experience from all those who have done it way better than I did. Many of them lost their businesses. And so now I was able to only minorly impact and mitigate some of the things that they just went bigger than I did. So can we learn from others? Yes, we can, if we allow our egos to. So I don't think it was just back then. Remember, I had my first failure was really in high school that I remember. And I didn't have a whole lot of help with that either, other than my parents trying to teach me that you got to learn how to fail. And I almost didn't graduate my first year of college, because it was so painful and there wasn't. So I think we need to do a better job with our students. I spent a lot of time being not just teacher, rabbi, priest, parent, girlfriend, counselor, psychologist, whomever they need me to be. And I spent a lot of time with my students, which is why I get so many great comments, because it's about the learning. It's the Stephen Brookfields. I'm not teaching a student the content of my class. I'm teaching them to be a good citizen and a good human being, and to do all these other things that we teachers don't often think is our mission. I do. And I want to make sure when they leave my class that they're going to do something with this information and go change the world. But I had to learn it first. And so why it seems so easy for me now? If you'd have seen me a few years ago, I was a pile of jello. But I was able to continue to going up. And now that I found the secret, I feel like I got the Willy Wonka golden ticket. Somebody finally understands what it means to let go and to move forward. But I think those skills are sometimes what we need to teach the college students, because if somebody would have taught me those coping skills, I might not have been such a drama queen. I might not have had such emotional issues of putting those things away in the back of the closet because I was too afraid to face them. Thank goodness a friend of mine reminded me I'm only 53 years old. And yes, I've had 2 failed marriages on top of it all. I'm telling you, I've had some epic failures. But the fact that I get it, and some people go to the grave never getting it. So that's why I find it my mission to help others so that you can get there faster. And maybe some of these kids won't have gone through the trauma that I did, because I don't know anyone that has my story from U of I yet. So if there are more, let's get a company or a club together. But I think if everybody did one thing with another person to show them, we don't like that vulnerable side. I'll tell you, I don't like to show my students when I don't have it together. But that's their most favorite parts, because I do weekly videos for all my students. And when I have had a bad day and I have something just went kerflooey, they find it more helpful. And I'm like, really? You're going to celebrate my failures right along with me? And my coaches are trying to help me be vulnerable in the moment. So can we get you to admit to it, like I'm doing here in front of God and everybody, going, yeah, I sucked at a lot of things. And only when I was able to admit that and say, you know what, I'm taking a risk here. You might not like my shtick. You might not like me. I might be too touchy-feely for you. I might be getting too close and hit a nerve. I might be just what you need to hear. That's my hope, is to connect with others to make it a little bit easier. So hopefully, whether your failure is at 2 years old, because toddlers fail all the time, it's no big deal, or at 20, or if the failures are left to come, that you recognize when they come, that you get excited about it and go, oh great, a present from Santa Claus, this is awesome, as opposed to putting it away in the closet and never seeing it for 30 years. It's choice, and we can choose a different path, but most of the time we don't. And so I'm here to be able to force you, like my professor, to find another way forward. I think there's another way that's more successful and more effective. but that's just me. I can only give you the benefits of my story and hope that you might listen a little bit and not do the dumb things that I did, right?
Well, a great response to that question. We've got a few more minutes, and like to encourage more questions. And by saying that, one of the things I learned when my oldest daughter was in the hospital as a toddler, basically just born, and was going to have some life-saving surgery, and the anesthesiologist came in to talk to my wife and I and said, "Hey, if you have any questions," after explaining what was going to happen, and we both sort of sat there in silence. And he said, "Look, the only dumb question is the one that never gets asked."
That's it.
So if you've got questions out of here, here's your chance for some free advice from Dr. Lentz. And while we're waiting for some other questions, I have a question for you that's related to what you were just talking about. It seems to me that success and resilience are close cousins to one another.
Mm.
Or saying it another way, resilience is one way that you deal with failure. What advice would you offer to parents today and people in business about instilling a greater sense of resilience in people? Because I think one of the challenges we have in our society right now is a lack of resilience and a willingness to run and suffer from fear of failure, much less failure itself. Just comment on that if you would.
Sure. I teach actually some things in resiliency for a lot of my students, particularly the doctoral program, because earning your doctorate can go anywhere from a year to 7 years or longer, and you need to be in a long haul, and that's life. And this is the part that many of them, there's a high what's called an ABD ratio, meaning all but dissertation. They get through the classes, but they can't get through the grind. And I see this as such a metaphor for life, as we can get in some things, but the minute we turn up the heat, we're out of here. And I also think there's some problems with commitment, is because we don't like to stick it out when the going gets tough. And I tell you, when I was 20, I didn't either. Going got tough, and I went shopping, and I went out, and I did anything else but feeling it. I think we have to do is we have to just stand there and say, keep showing up and keep working through it. All of my coaches, I've seen some horrible failures for them, but the biggest thing that keeps them all together is they kept showing up and they kept working it, and they kept working, and they kept, if they didn't know the answer, they put their egos away and they asked questions for somebody to help them. We don't like to ask for help. It's painful. We think asking questions is a sign of weakness. We think we don't want other people to realize that we do need help. To me, I think asking for help is a sign of strength. It's a sign of you being able to say, you know what, I could use a little bit of help today. I'm not doing everything. I don't have all the answers. I don't know where it is. And as a leader, we don't have to have all the answers. We just need to know how to find them. So I suggest you do what I do, is create your inner circle. And when you need help, you know when to pick up the phone. Or like today, I had a call that she knew I needed her. I sometimes don't know how that woman knows. But I struggled because of fear yesterday. I was really, really overcome with fear as a result of the weather yesterday. I've been that scared since I was in a tsunami when I lived in Japan. It was just a little bit more frightening. And this is something that when I'm single now, I'm not used to having that kind of fear. And the idea is connection. When we connect with another human being, a boss, a friend, a colleague, a professional, whatever that is, to help us keep going. Most of us go inward and think, we listen to the voices in our head. I'm the failure. I suck. People don't want to be with us. We have this talk track that goes on in our head all the time. We need to shut it off. And we need to get into our heart and be able to say, no, we're good. We're cool. You're not being part of my world, then you're missing out. And people fall in love with me all the time now. And they're like, how do you do that? It takes work. It's a muscle to keep every day. Am I always Susie Sunshine? Nope. Ask Mark. He's talked to me a couple times. Because people are messy. Emotions are messy. Failure's messy. But I don't know any way forward either than either you deal with it or you don't. And when you don't, you pay the piper. So I think the idea of resiliency is to find others, because this is what spouses do. This is what friends do. It doesn't change what happens to us. It helps us know we're not alone when we're going through it. And this is the part we're having with COVID right now, is that we feel all sheltered and in place, and the fact that we can't have this. I mean, I can't remember the last time I had a hug from somebody, right? And that physical contact that's so important. We need to find other ways forward that we can get what we need. And here's the secret. And I really think it's going to be, it's not meant to be trite, but you got to ask. Student 10 years ago taught me something that her grandmother taught. Closed mouth doesn't get fed. And if you have something that you need, you have to ask. You are going to risk that people might not give it to you. They might think that you're a drama queen. Yesterday, I was so much of a girl. I wasn't really up for talking for many people, thinking that, oh my gosh, if they can think that Doxy is scared of Mother Nature and all the nonsense going on outside. It's like, yeah, I was. And I'm willing to tell you. And it's okay. I was a girl. And you know what? When I got up this morning, my friends just called and they loved me a little bit more. It's like, you can admit that? It's like, it's not like I can hide it. I mean, I was scared. It's okay. I think we need to just ask for what we need and be willing to be vulnerable in that moment and hope that another human being is going to recognize that vulnerability and love us just a little bit more.
Great. Here's another great question. This is a really good one. And I think you probably have an answer for this.
Uh-oh.
How does one shut out others who keep bringing you down?
Oh, that's easy. We fire them. That's an easy one in there. I learned that long ago. This is the hard part, okay? I am a big component. My family will tell you this. Family is not, biology is not family. Family is not biology. I have had friends, I told you I'm 53. My longest term friend is 52. We were raised together and we have to work at our friendship. But I'll tell you, there's some friends that I've lost along the way. Why? They don't meet my needs. I don't meet them. I have family members that, yes, I'm related to, but that wasn't my choice. It was my parents. It was the family choice in there. And we all have this stigma that says that somehow because we're in these circles, we have to stay there. And the answer is nope. I'm a former military wife. I've moved all over the world. I created family where I needed family to be. And family doesn't share the same last name that I have. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's imported family. I've got lots of aunts and uncles. They're not blood related. Lots of mom and dads. So the cool thing, I don't get just one mom and dad. I get lots of them. And it's the point is sometimes if you have people that are just bringing you down and sucking the energy, you just have to say bye-bye. Because here is something that a lot of the top coaches in the world will teach you. You are who the first 6 people are that you hang with. The books that you read, the people you hang with, that's what you're thinking. If you don't like what they're thinking, it's called stinking thinking, fire them. It's going to be tough, particularly I've had friendships for long-term years and I'm going, you know what, I don't have problem. I don't suffer fools easily. If you're not going to be loyal for me, you're not going to try for me, you're going to stab me in the back, you're going to have all these horrible things. I don't need that in my life. Life is too short. So I have culled my friendships over the years to only those who serve me and only for whom I can be of contribution to them. And if you're going to be negative now, bye-bye. You're not going to be, yeah, there's the door. See ya. Have a nice life. But that's tough, particularly if it's family. I don't know where we get this bizarre sense that somehow we have to be loyal to people who aren't loyal to us and who treat us worse than anything I've ever seen. No, that's just not how the contract works in there. So if you're going to have people that are going to bring you down, you're going to have to change your inner circle and be able to be strong enough and say, hey, this isn't working for me, and find a new circle of friends. Well, you know what my new coach likes to say, if you're the smartest person in the room and you're not getting what you want, find a new room. So I suggest, as hard as it may be, you have to find a new circle of friends who meets your needs, who are positive and uplifting, and maybe offer another choice to those who are behaving that way, because behavior like that serves them only when you feed it. If you fire them and you don't feed it, that behavior stops, or at least it stops for you.
Yeah, the comment here is, and I can agree to this, or I can relate to it, that it's difficult in this binary world, you know, in this COVID environment. You have friends at each end of the perspective, and not just COVID, on many different levels. And it's a challenge to say goodbye, because you don't want to lose them. But I just keep telling myself that this too shall pass, and that we have to have that inner talk with ourselves, sometimes almost, I would say, on the hour some days.
Oh yes, I have that I have to look myself in the eye and I have to talk mirrors. And if I don't have that ability to talk yourself off a ledge, because we have to learn how to be self-soothing. And in the event that somebody isn't there, particularly if you're single, let me tell you, I've learned a lot about this when I've been divorced now 4 years. And it's been strange to have those types of things, but here are a couple things you can do. You have your inner circle. When you hit the point of no return, when you can't do it yourself, you pick up the phone and you know who to call for what. I have one friend that whenever I need a kick in the butt, he knows he's going to give me the same advice. He chuckles every time I call him, about once every 4 or 5 years. And Rick always will tell me, suck it up, Buttercup. You know that's what I'm going to tell you, and it's tough love, and he loves me through it. I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. So everyone comes to you with a different thing, because here's the real lesson. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. Many of us have amazing teachers that come into our lives. We're just not willing to listen to them. And we're not willing to be able to hear what they have to tell us. Remember that gift. We can choose to be a gift, or we can choose to hear it as criticism. If you can hear it as, hey, I'm weak today, I need some help. I've been on the phone with a lot of folks. Sometimes I'm the strong one and I'm talking to my friends. Other times they're the strong one. Sometimes we only know how to be strong for other people. We have a hard time for being strong for ourselves. We need to learn to be the gift to others. Let them into our lives and be strong, because they want to help us. So give them an opportunity. Sadly, I'm a bit of a drama queen sometimes, and I have a lot of opportunities for my friends to help, and I'm okay with that, and so are they. But you need to find people that are true friends, that no matter what you show them, no matter what they see, they love you anyway, and in the bad times, they love you even more. That's what a friendship is. I think a lot of these people in our lives are surface level acquaintances. We just don't need that kind of acquaintance. Pick a few good ones and let them stay with you for life. You'll be a lot happier.
Thank you. Great.
Dee, I think we're coming up the top of the hour here. I personally want to thank you, Cheryl. Excellent stuff. Again, I think there's a tidbit for everybody here. There were some really great questions. So thank you once again. Really appreciate it. And Dee, I'll leave it to you to close out.
May I leave some
Thank you.
contact information, Dee, so that if someone needs to contact me, I'm happy to further the conversation if they're interested, and I'm happy to give you my contact if that's helpful.
That's great. Do you want to put your contact information right into the chat?
Oh, sure, I'll do that. Okay.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
then everyone will have it.
Yeah.
And I want to thank everyone for attending today. And again, thanks to Dr. Cheryl Lentz. This was a great inspiration. And during these challenging times, it was certainly good to hear the positivity and the wisdom and how to pick yourself up and dust yourself off a bit. I want to point out that we will have a webinar coming up in October with Brian Brower on October 15th. Brian will take us through the planning that has been going on at the university in relation to COVID and how that looks, and it's certainly going to be interesting. We will have an event also in September, and then another one probably the end of October. So keep checking, check the website, look for your emails, and join us again for another session here with Illini Spotlights with the alumni. So thank you to everyone. Thanks, you, Dr.
Everybody.
Cheryl. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much for having me. And ILLINI, stay safe, guys. We've got a whole lot more things we have to do in this world, so I appreciate being here. Be good.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.